Okay, so let's continue with our next video in practice this exam question series for AWS Certified Developer Associate exam. So let's read question number 111. A company has an image storage web application that run on AWS. So they have some application which is storing the images, and that application is running on AWS. The company hosts the application on EC2. So within the AWS, the application is actually running on the EC2 instances. And EC2 instances are like controlled by the auto scaling group. So maybe like scale up and scale down facilities also there. The auto scaling group act as a target group for the load balancer. So they have the load balancer as well. And after that, you have the auto scaling group, and using the auto scaling group, basically the EC2 instances will spin up and down, and uses an S3 bucket to store the images. So because it is image storing, so where they are storing, so they are storing the images into the S3 bucket. The company wants to develop a feature to test system request. So let's suppose they want to develop some feature to test system request, and the feature will direct a request to a separate target group that hosts a new beta version of the application. So maybe some new feature, and what they want to do is they want to test this request, right? So if they want to test this request and they want to direct this request to a separate target group, so maybe you have same load balancer. One target group is the existing EC2 instance, another target group is the different EC2 instance, uh, which is hosting your new beta version of the application. Which solution will meet the requirement with the least effort? So how you can implement this? All right, create a new auto scaling group. Definitely, because if you have to host your new EC2 instance or new application or new beta version, uh, so you need to create an EC2 and behind the auto scaling group, and add the target group for the beta version of the application. So basically, currently the load balancer is pointing to this one existing, so you need to point to that one also. Basically, two target group. Update the ALB, so you need to update the existing ALB routing rule with a condition, and now you need to put some condition, because otherwise how it is going to be routed? Otherwise by default maybe one time on the production one time will be the test one, which is wrong, because only the developer want to test this. So you need to put some condition. uh, Use the ALB routing rule with a condition that look like a for a cookie named version that has a value of beta. So maybe you can pass something like a cookie, and if you are passing some cookie, update the test system code to use the cookie to test the beta version of the application. So this is one option. Another option is create a new load balancer. So totally a new load balancer. In this question, we are just creating a scaling group and target group, and updating the load balancer, which looks correct because it says the feature will direct request to a separate target group. All right, and a new beta version of the application. Uh, if you use the create the new auto load balancer, uh, application load balancer auto, so it's a totally a different setup, rather than like, so maybe like most overhead. Maybe you can question, because here you are also updating the application code to handle that. So again, the more effort, but the question say which least effort. But if you create a new load balancer, uh, like you need to write some cloud formation template, deploy the resources, more cost, right? And effort is still same. But if you just update the code with some 1 or 2 lines of code, that is not a very much effort. So it's the question says least effort, not a zero effort. So A looks correct rather than creating a new load balancer. Along with that, they said that you need to use the alternate route 53 endpoint. So now in this case, uh, let's put the developer is testing. So developer, if testing the test feature, so they can use a different URL. If the developer is testing the production feature, they can use a different URL. So he has to switch. But in the first case, the developer don't need to switch. The developer just can pass some cookie value, and based upon that, your API is going to hit either the production version or either the beta version. All right. So here you have to set up route 53. Again, more complexity. So out of A and B, A will be preferred, but let's see C and D. Create a new auto load balancer. Sorry, application load balancer. Again, same thing. Along with that, they have mentioned use CloudFront with Lambda edge function to determine which specific request you will go to the load balancer. So unnecessary, you are setting the cloud front and the lambda at the right edge, and looks in the second question, D option. Similarly, you are creating cloud front lambda, so which is not required. So A looks correct to me. Question number 112. A team is developing an application that is deployed on EC2 instance. So your application is running on EC2 instances. During testing, the team receives an error. The EC2 instance are unable to access to the S3 bucket because this is one AWS service, this is another AWS service. So EC2 is trying to S3, but they are getting some error. What will be the issue? Basically, the IAM role. Like, so you need to update your IAM role. So which two step you will team take to troubleshoot the issue? Check whether the policy is assigned to the IAM role that is attached to the EC2, which has grant. Totally correct. First, we'll check the EC2 is trying to connect with the S3 bucket. So the role which is trying to connect with the S3, whether that role has the permission or not, we will check that. Check the S3 bucket policy to validate the access permission. Definitely correct, because S3 also has the inline policy which might explicitly deny the request. Alright, so we will check the S3 bucket policy. Check whether the policy assigned to the IAM user. No, so here user is not coming to the picture. It should be the role. So C is wrong. Check the S3 lifecycle policy. Like, why should we check the lifecycle policy? We are not deleting any events. Check the security groups. So totally wrong. So A and B is the answer. Question number 113. A developer is working on an e-commerce website. The developer wants to review server logs without logging into each of the application server individually. So maybe and the website running on multiple. So your application is running on EC2 instances. So right, and you want to check the application logs. So one option is you can log into your each EC2 instance and then check the logs, but they clearly mention they don't want to uh, do the logging. So they want to review the server logs without logging. So it means the application should send the logs to the CloudWatch logs. All right, that is the only option available. So let's see. Rewrite the application to the cloud native and to run on AWS Lambda. No, totally wrong. Why should we run on the AWS Lambda just to send the logs to the CloudWatch? Set up centralized logging by using Amazon open source service Logstash dashboard. No. Scale down the application to one larger EC2 instance. No. Install the unified CloudWatch agent on the EC2 and configure the agent to push the application. Definitely correct. So on all the EC2 instances, we will just install the CloudWatch agent, and when the application is going to run, that CloudWatch agent is just push the logs to the CloudWatch. So D is correct. Question number 114. A company is creating an application that processes CSV files from Amazon S3. So S3 currently holds CSV files. The developer has created S3 bucket. So S3 has CSV files. And the developer has created a AWS Lambda function to process the CSV file from the S3 bucket. So basically, Lambda is processing the file from the S3 bucket. Which combination of step will be invoke the Lambda function when the CSV file is uploaded? So they said what they want to do is, as soon as the file has been created, the Lambda function has been triggered. So what we need to do, we just need to set up an event or add a trigger. All right, so let's see. Create an Amazon event bridge rule. Configure the rule that with the pattern to match the S3 object created event. Looks okay. And schedule an Amazon event bridge rule to a new Lambda function to scan the S3 bucket. Like, why should we scan the S3 bucket? Wrong. Add a trigger to the existing Lambda function. Set the trigger type to event bridge. Select the Amazon event bridge rule. Looks correct. We need to add a trigger to the Lambda function. Create a new Lambda function to scan the S3 bucket. We don't need to scan the function. Add S3 lifecycle rules. We don't need the S3 lifecycle rules. So A and C looks correct. Question number 115. A developer needs to build an AWS CloudFormation template that self-populate the AWS region variable that deploys to the CloudFormation template. What is the most operational efficient way to determine the region in which template is moved? So they said, like, we have the CloudFormation template, and which is going to use to provision the AWS resources. So they said when they are going to deploy the CloudFormation template in any region, the region should automatically pick up. All right. Uh, so we have, like, there is a parameter called AWS region. If you define this, it is automatically going to pick the region. This require the region as a cloud formation parameter? No, because if you do this, then you have to manually pass the region. Right. So, but here the question say it has to determine the region rather than manually pass. So B is wrong. Find the region from the stack ID. So stack ID is not for the region; it's for the stack ID. Dynamically import the region by referencing relevant parameter system manager. No, it's wrong. Unnecessary. Why should we set up the system parameter store? So A looks correct. Question number 116. A company has 100 of AWS Lambda function that the company's QA team need to test by using the Lambda function URL. So they have so many Lambda function, and the QA team want to test these Lambda functions using a URL. The developer need to configure the authentication of the Lambda function to allow access to the QIM group. Because this is, if you create a Lambda function and you have the URL, if anyone has the URL, then any person can trigger the Lambda function, right? But what they want is they want to set up some authentication method so that only QA IAM group, so you have only one IAM group, only that can trigger the Lambda function by using the public URL. Otherwise, public URL can be used by anyone, but they want to set up some authentication method. So you have some QIM group, right? So if maybe some kind of policy or some kind of you need to attach, right? So let's see. Create a CLI script that loops on the Lambda function to add a Lambda function URL with AWS IAM auth type. Okay, let's quickly go through the options. Create a CLI script Lambda function to add a Lambda function URL with no none auth type. So this is wrong. Definitely we don't need none auth type, because if we give the none auth type, anyone can have the public URL, can access the URL, can trigger the Lambda. So B and D definitely we can reject because it has none auth type, none auth type. So we have only two options left, A and C, AWS IAM auth type, AWS IAM auth type, which looks correct. But let's see which one is correct. Run another script to create an IAM identity based policy. So they said create a one IAM policy which allow the Lambda function URL action for all the Lambda function. Attach that policy to your IAM group. Looks correct because we have already the IAM group. We can attach the policy, uh, and that policy will decide which Lambda function we need to invoke, right? So that looks correct, and let's see. So till this point it's same. Run another script to loop on the Lambda functions to create an IAM identity based policy that allow the invoke function URL from the QIM group. So this will also work, but this is unnecessary resource extensive, because you are running a loop on the Lambda function, and for each Lambda function you are creating a policy. You don't need to create a policy for the each Lambda function. You can create a central policy and one policy, and that single policy can be attached to the IAM group, and that single policy can decide which all the Lambda function can be triggered. So A will be the correct answer. Question number 117. A developer maintains a critical business application that uses DynamoDB as data store. So your application has the DynamoDB as a backend, as a data store. The DynamoDB contains millions of documents, so many documents, and receives 30 to 60 requests each minute. So number of requests which is coming to the database is also high, 30 to 60 requests each minute. The developer need to perform processing in near real time on the document as soon as they added or updated. So they said they want to process the document in near real time as soon as they added. So what you can do is you can set up the DynamoDB stream, because what the DynamoDB stream is, as soon as the any item has been added, it will move to the it will send the data, same data to the stream, and with the stream you can trigger the Lambda to process that. So let's see. Set up a cron job on Amazon EC2 instance, wrong. Enable a DynamoDB stream, yes, because this is a real time. As soon as you insert the item or update the item, it will go to the stream, and from the stream you can trigger the Lambda function. B is correct. Update the application to send a put events to Amazon Cloud Event Bridge, and then invoke a Lambda function to process. No. Update the application to synchronously process the document directly from the DynamoDB, right? No. So B is correct. Question number 118. A developer is writing an application for a company. The application deployed on EC2 and that is using RDS. The company security team require the database credentials are rotated at least weekly. So they want, because your application which is running on EC2 is using the RDS database, they want this RDS database credential should be rotated. How should the developer do? So if you want to rotate, we have one service that is the secret manager. You can store the database credential into the secret manager and you can enable the rotation. Create a database user, store the username password in the system parameter. You can store it into the system parameter, sure, but rotation is not allowed there. So enable IAM authentication for the database. Create a database user for IAM authentication. So enable, no, wrong. Create a database user, store the username and password into the secret manager. Yes, you can use the secret manager, and that has been daily rotation enabled. Use the EC2 user to create a database user, provide the user in the environment variable. Totally wrong. So C is the correct answer. Question number 119. A real-time messaging application uses Amazon API Gateway, WebSocket API with backend HTTP service. A developer need to build a feature in the application to identify a client that keeps connecting to and disconnecting from the WebSocket. So you have this Amazon API Gateway, which has the WebSocket API, and the client is trying to connect with your Amazon API Gateway and also connect and disconnect. And you want to build some feature, you want to identify which client is connecting and which client is disconnecting. Also, the developer also need the ability to remove the client. So the developer also want some feature in the application so that the developer can also remove the client. Maybe if they found any client is fishy, they can remove that. Which combination of changes should the developer made? Switch to HTTP, wrong, because we already has the WebSocket API. You don't need to switch to the HTTP. Switch to REST API, wrong. Some option you can directly eliminate in the actual exam, even if you don't know anything. Use the callback URL to disconnect the client from the backend service. So callback URL generally callback URL in any terms is something like that. When any action has been done, only then you can call that particular URL. Add code to track the client status in Amazon Elasticsearch. Yes, because we need to track like which clients are connecting, right? Uh, so you need some kind of feature in the Elasticsearch, right? Implement $connect and $disconnect route. Yes, because you want a feature so that you can remove the client. So you need a disconnect kind of like a function or connect kind of function, right? So D and E looks correct to me. Question number 120. A developer has written code for an application. So developer has write some code and want to share it with other developers. So the shared application code needs to be stored long term with multiple version. Okay, so which AWS service? So you have only one AWS service, that is the code commit, same as the GitHub, because that is a version. You can show the multiple version, and within the GitHub you can share the code with multiple developers. Similarly, on the AWS you have the code commit. So node code build, node S3, node cloud9. Cloud9 is the ID, S3 for the object. Code build is to build your application. So code commit is to store. So C is the correct answer. So that's it. That's the end of the video, and thank you.